We're recording?
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Barbara, would you please call the roll?
Okay, we have Commissioner Sales, Moss, Noonan, and Parfrey present.
This proceeding will be broadcast on Channel 35. Let's start with our report from the General Manager, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one quick point that I wanted to bring to this Commission's attention, the Board's attention, is that the MTA is undertaking a lot of concurrent activities for developing public transit, light rail projects, some of it significantly funded by federal funds that became available to get those moving forward. I wanted to bring to your attention that all of those require power, and they require a significant electric design on behalf of the department, working in collaboration with the outside contractors and designers of the MTA, both their in-house staff and their contractors on that. The projects are going along in parallel. There's a lot of pressure that's being placed upon the department right now to try to move forward with our support on that. Quite frankly, at times when sometimes the contractors on behalf of the MTA aren't quite where they're supposed to be, yet we're trying to work with them as best support as we can. We have set aside Aram Benjamin, the power system, has set aside a team to help support this and work on that and get it going forward. At the same time, they're doing that while we're doing everything that we have to do day to day to keep the lights on at DWP, work on our power reliability program, and all of our standard day-to-day projects, as well as all the work we're doing on repowering our Haynes unit and soon our Scattergood plant. So I just wanted you to be aware those are additional burdens that are being pushed on our staff. We do get funded for some of that effort by the MTA, but at the end of the day, funding doesn't create new engineers that are familiar with LADWP's design and processes, overnight either. So it is something that's of a concern to us to get there. We're doing everything we can to make certain that we can be on top of that process. But I just want to make you aware that sometimes there's some external things that put pressures that are unusual to our day-to-day activities that we have to deal with. So I'm pleased with the work that the power system has done on that. We're hopeful that we'll be able to keep on top of that because we do share the overall goal of getting those projects done as quickly as possible. We're hopeful that we can meet those schedules where we can, and if not, it won't be for lack of trying. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? Let's move to operations.
We do have a speaker card for item number 2.
Let's have the speaker.
Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, Northeast LA Coalition Councils. We're quite interested in this particular subject because you currently have what is called the water supply assessment. Should there be a power supply assessment? Because we've looked at, yes, the Measure R projects for transit are large. There's also one for the SR 710, which most likely would be a tunnel with huge ventilation requirements. All of these would be borne, I presume, by DWP. Oh, by the way, someday there may be a California high-speed rail. And where's the center of 3 different lines? LA. Where's the power going to come from that? They show all sorts of wind towers and such like that around, but they don't say how many megawatts are going to be required and when, and whether they're peak load, base load, or what loads. So I would highly recommend that you have a power supply assessment for major projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last speaker.
Let's move now to operations issues. Any requests or comments from commissioners?
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to pull item 13.
No, this is on item 3. Just are there on operations issues?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll come. Thank you. On item 4, we have 2 speaker cards.
Yes, I have 2 speakers for item 4. The first speaker is Arthur Hanson.
I'm sorry, the first speaker is?
Arthur Hanson?
Mr. Hanson.
Yes, there's a potential lawsuit. The Water and Power has decided to hire Harry and Hall employees in lieu of complying with the city charter, which states whenever practical, positions shall be filled by transfer. And that situation happened about 10 years ago when the PD&C, they hired a bunch of LA City employees and outside employees to fill the positions. Now, somebody retired and nobody's keeping an eye on the store, so you've got another Lilly Ledbetter style lawsuit by probably dozens of city employees who haven't been able to either come over here on an emergency basis to work on positions or whatever. There have been people that were working there like 15 years as an exempt basis, and that violates the intent and the statement in the civil service rules that you should have the opportunity to promote or transfer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I could indulge for a moment, I notice we have Councilmember Reyes here in the audience. I wonder if it's possible we might take out of order the topic on
Sure.
those comments.
Let's move to item 23.
Did you want to finish with the one other speaker for item 4?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we finish on one more public comment card?
I'll make it quick. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council DWP liaison and painter of fire hydrants also. Our fire hydrants, we did have a meeting with your staff, thank you very much, and they're trying to figure out what the problem is with the paint. We're also looking at replacing all the caps that are missing. So thank you very much for getting people out to visit El Sereno, see our lovely fire hydrants, and figure out something to do with the paint. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move now, in the interest of time, to, I know there are quite a few speakers, let's move to item 23.
And I believe we have Councilmember Reyes here. I understand you're on a tight schedule. Councilmember, if it would be possible for him
Yeah,
to
please
take
come
comments.
forward, Councilman. Welcome.
Wherever you're comfortable.
Wherever you feel most comfortable.
This is fine. But, first, I want to thank you and thank for the consideration, allow me to speak. I have Planning Land Use Management Committee in about 10 minutes. Small thing called the Hollywood Community Plan. But first, I want to say that this has been a very difficult challenge for all of us. I know Water and Power in the past has been able to look at community issues in a manner that speaks to the welfare and the needs of our city. You've demonstrated that 8 years ago when you put the initial funding for the River Master Plan and your continued support of that project. And I would hope that you could see this issue in the same light. Commissioners, I have submitted a letter for the record outlining my concerns regarding the Illusion Reservoir. This has been a 20-year process, 20 years to determine the appropriate way to meet the federal requirement to cover our open reservoirs. I believe that the option before you today does the bare minimum to meet that requirement, but does not satisfy the multiple needs of my district and, quite frankly, the city of LA. This reservoir is located on Recreation and Parks property, and the Department of Water and Power has made commitments over the years to retain the open space and recreational value of the area. This is why a previous commission asked Water and Power staff to study the buried tanks as a proposed project of the EIR. I believe that was about 2 years ago. To then determine, and it's going to sound like a harsh statement because I do value the work and support from Mr. Nichols and the staff. But then to determine the buried tanks are not environmentally preferred because there will be impacts during construction is short-sighted. And quite frankly, it feels like a deliberate misleading of the community as to the direction Water and Power would take with regard to Illusion Reservoir. I'm here today to request the Commission carefully review staff's recommendations and ensure that you treat this part of the city with equal consideration as you have given other projects such as the Silver Lake Reservoir and headworks. I would like to see the buried tanks as the preferred alternative for this reservoir. It creates 14 acres of usable open space on top of the tanks, which meet a critical need for the community and fulfills Water and Power's commitment during the many years of mediation on this project. And I got to share with you, this is one of those issues that just makes you wonder, why did it take 20 years? Like, what was the reason? Where was this notion of the public servant, especially in this part of town? Everything that we are trying to achieve when it speaks to improving our revenue base, improving income stream, raising the rates, is about impacting each individual in the city. So I understand what you're up against as commissioners. I understand that there is a frugality and a fiscal responsibility that we're all trying to attain. I get it. But to put this community in this place, it is very difficult for me to accept. But I do know that we need to make this community whole, one way or another. And I do believe the buried tanks are the preferred alternative. And so again, I thank you for your hard work. And as commissioners, you are giving your time to this great city. And this is not an easy task. But this does weigh heavy on the surrounding communities. And the thing about the 20 years, it has sharpened a lot of legal swords out there. And I want to prevent that encounter, that engagement, that could in the long run make it even more costly and drag this out even longer. And to try to avoid that would be, I think, to everyone's advantage. And for that, I thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman. Let's take item 23. Who's
So the
presenting?
presentation, Glenn?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Glenn Singley. I'm the Director of Water Engineering and Technical Services, and this project has been in kind of our shop and our division to develop the project, and we've worked with the community over the years on this project. I'd just like to give you a little background before we have comments. We are having to deal with all of our open reservoirs because of two water regulations that were proffered by the EPA, the Long-Term 2 Enhanced Surface Water Treatment Rule and the Stage 2 Disinfection and Disinfectants and Disinfection Byproducts Rule. Both of those in combination really demand that we cover our reservoirs or bypass our reservoirs or treat our reservoirs after the water enters them. We started with 10 open reservoirs. 5 are now in compliance. 5 are still remaining to become into compliance. We've basically made a decision on 4 of the 5, and today is the remaining reservoir that we're considering Elysian. Here's a picture of Elysian and the environment that it sits in, right in Elysian Park. Purpose of the project is to ensure quality, reliability, and stability of the water supply. Primary objectives are to meet the water quality standards, maintain the storage that's needed on the site, and a secondary objective of the EIR was to provide a publicly accessible recreation area at the reservoir property. The proposed project, as it was outlined in the EIR, was to prepare buried storage at the site. We would first demolish the existing reservoir, construct buried concrete covered reservoir within the footprint of the existing reservoir, maintaining the existing storage capacity, and then cover that reservoir with 3 feet of soil and make that area publicly acceptable or accessible for recreation at the reservoir site. This project would take approximately 5.5 years to construct for the buried storage. Here are outlines of some areas that we would have to use during the construction for stockpiling, for laydown areas, and some of the truck turnarounds. So we would be using the high road at the lookout for the vehicles to come down to access the site. The floating cover alternative would consist of demolishing the existing reservoir liner and appurtenant facilities, constructing a new asphalt liner, installing a flexible membrane floating cover over the water surface, and this would allow us to maintain the existing water storage capacity. We're also including access around the reservoir to the wildlife pond that they're contemplating at the top end of the reservoir. So we would allow public to walk back there and access that pond. This project would take about 2.5 years to construct. The second alternative, well, here's just some details of the floating cover. We also included some enhancements to the project, to the park, that would be included in the immediate area of the reservoir cover, as well as the remainder of the park, including all of these things on the list. Here's an example of a recently completed floating cover at Santa Ynez. And this is in view of several hundred homes along Palisades Drive. The second alternative is an aluminum cover, which would be a rigid cover that we could construct with or without solar panels. It would be a lightweight aluminum cover over top the water surface, so it wouldn't float on the surface. We would, again, maintain the existing water storage capacity and, again, provide access around the reservoir to the wildlife pond in the rear. And this would take about 4 years to construct. Some examples of an existing, this is our bypass reservoir at the Van Norman complex on the upper left-hand corner, and a typical array of solar panels that could be placed on top of that aluminum cover if it were desired. We have done a complete environmental impact report, and here are some of the results of that report, the conclusions on aesthetics, air quality, and biological resources. Also cultural resources, noise, and traffic. And in some cases we have impacts that are significant and unavoidable, and in some cases those are more or less than, or significant, or less than the proposed project for the most part. A little about the differences in the construction. Total off-site truck trips for the buried storage is about 48,000 trips. That's 24,000 round trips, or 48,000 trips back and forth. Floating cover would have approximately 11,800. Aluminum cover about 15,000. Peak equipment, you can see there, peak personnel on the job site constructing the project. And then total volume of earthwork, about 425,000 cubic yards of earth to be moved in the buried storage. A very minimal amount of earthwork for the floating cover, and less than 1,000 cubic yards for the aluminum cover. Recreation area created for the buried storage. We would have recreation on top of the reservoir area. For the floating cover and the aluminum cover, we couldn't have access on top of the reservoir, but we would have access around the perimeter and access to the wildlife pond. Again, the cost for the buried reservoir, about $110 million, and these are 60-year equivalent costs. The floating cover, about $25 million, the aluminum cover, $55 million. Now, this includes the replacement needs and the differential and the O&M for these three projects. Length of construction, you can see there. Construction duration, a lot of this depends on the timing of how long it will take to design the project and complete design of the project. So we would look at 2015 to 2021, or 2014 to 2016, or 2014 to 2018, depending on the project. Summary, buried reservoir has the greatest environmental impacts. primarily due to construction, but it meets all the objectives, including the publicly accessible recreation area on top of the reservoir. Aluminum cover alternative has reduced environmental impacts, meets the water quality and water storage objectives, but no recreation directly on top of the reservoir. Floating cover, likewise, it is the least environmental impacts, meets water quality and water storage objectives, but there would be no recreation on top of the reservoir itself. Our recommendation, because of the cost and other issues and the environmental conditions, that we recommend the floating cover alternative for the following reasons: meeting the primary objectives of water quality and storage. It has been named as the environmentally superior alternative, has the lowest capital and 60-year costs, and the shortest construction duration. That's my presentation.
I think I'm going to let's take public comment now, then we'll get questions from the commissioners.
Okay.
We have, I think, 11 speakers.
Yes. I just wanted to note that we have had 12 speaker cards all told with Councilmember Reyes's for item 23. And in addition, I would like to bring to the board's attention that we've received 12 emails and letters on this matter, including the letter from Councilmember Reyes. And all of the correspondence has been provided to you and has been entered into the record.
Thank you.
Okay, the first speaker, and we're going to limit our time to 2 minutes, is Jude Rodriguez.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jude Rodriguez. I'm 11 years old. I'm a gifted student at Solano Avenue Elementary School, and I have lived in Solano Canyon all my life. I love it here. I go to one of the best schools in all state. I have great neighbors, and all my life, Elysian Park has been a place where I spend much of my time. From playgrounds to the Little League, from tennis to basketball, I've always made most of our park. And every day we take our dog for a walk. Season after season, I'm amazed by the park's beauty, and I always feel lucky because I live so close. Sometimes we take a path around the reservoir and imagine it different. What if there was a lake? What if it was filled with trees? What if there were soccer fields or playgrounds? We imagined so many things, but we never imagined it being covered up with a lid. So I'm asking, shouldn't we give the reservoir more consideration? I can't believe that putting a cover over it is an option. That doesn't sound like a responsible solution. There are other reservoirs that have been taken care of and have been treated with respect and dignity. Doesn't Elysian Park, one of the oldest parks in the city, deserve this as well? Why should it continue to be off limits? Instead, let's fill it with trees where wildlife and plant life can flourish, where oxygen could be given to the atmosphere, leaving a smaller carbon footprint. It may cost us up front, but in the long run, there will be so much more to value. Let's not sell ourselves short. We are the people of a great city, and I know I'm going to be a part of its future. Let's extend the beauty of Elysian Park, something we'll continue to treasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
The next speaker is...
Just thank you, and we know why you're in the gifted program. Thank you so much.
Okay, the next speaker is Alexandra Owens, and after that, Jamie Tada. Okay.
Hi.
Pull it up. Pull it up toward you. There you go.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Owens. I go to Solano Avenue School. I think it's kind of a bad idea to put a lid on the reservoir. It wouldn't look that nice, and I like going there because I like drawing a lot of pictures, and I'm always drawing nice little things, and I wouldn't want to draw a big plastic thing on any of my drawings.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jamie Todd, and after that, Gabrielle Owens Flores.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Tada, and I am a 6th grade student at Solano Avenue Elementary School. Our school is just southwest of Elysian Reservoir. I am here today to tell you that I disagree on the idea of placing a plastic cover over the reservoir that will become ruined after a few short years. This is a waste of money. Instead, placing green landscaping that everyone can enjoy for generations should be considered. Would you really like a future with a reservoir covered by plastic tarp when there is beautiful nature around it? If we have the money to make the reservoirs better, Why not allocate it to the part of the city that really needs it, like Elysian Park? The area surrounding the reservoir is a beautiful wooded area filled with animals and where many people hike, picnic, and exercise. There are also many places to sit and view the entire Los Angeles basin. If you haven't been there lately, I suggest that you take the time to visit the area and you will better understand the impact of your decisions. Placing landscaping and parks over the reservoir would help city dwellers experience more of the outdoors, almost like they were in their own backyard. Placing a piece of plastic over the reservoir will only make it look like a garbage dump, which wouldn't be beneficial to people and the wildlife around Solano Canyon. Thank you.
Thank you also.
Okay, the next speaker is Gabriel Owens Flores, and after that, Jaslyn Mitchell.
Hello, I'm Gabriel Owens. I'm a 12-year-old resident of Solano Canyon, which is right next to Elysian Park. And I believe this is an incredibly irresponsible decision. And frankly, it'll compromise the integrity of our city by decreasing the amount of vital park and reservoir space. Let's face it, it's not aesthetic, nor will it benefit the park, nor will it benefit the park. The park will not benefit from this unsightly gap in oxygen, as well as a place where flora and fauna used to propagate and flourish. The essence of this decision would be to shortchange our already shrinking park space in lieu of beautification and the use of extraneous revenue. In fact, for a big city, Los Angeles has the least amount of park space per capita. Why do we have to add kindlewood to an already blazing inferno? I believe that we shouldn't have any cover, not a rigid one, not a flexible one, not a malleable one. We will rue the day when we decided to go with the plastic cover and view it with contempt. This might sound slanderous, but it's true. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jaslyn Mitchell, and after that, Sally Neubauer.
Good afternoon, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Associates. My name is Jaslyn Mitchell, and I am a 6th grade student at Solano Avenue Elementary School. We are here today to talk about one thing, and that one thing is a huge reservoir, which is approximately 23.8 square miles. A reservoir is a natural or artificial place where water is collected and stored for use. And where is all the water in that reservoir? Gone. So that means that 23.8 square miles of land is wasted. And to me, there is one huge word that popped into my head when I first heard this: possibilities. And oh, there are so many possibilities that come to my mind when I think about what the reservoir can become. And so I thought those possibilities were the most important things, and here, while I have your undivided attention, I will state some of those wonderful possibilities. First of all, if we transform that reservoir into a park, the local school, which I attend, would have a place to go and have a wonderful field trip. And they would be able to explore the wonders of nature in a friendly environment. People can also have a wonderful, enjoyable picnic on a nice sunny day. Or people can have a stroll with their dogs in the afternoon or an early morning jog. This is my last year at the school, and it has been wonderful. I would like to provide an even better feature for the younger students of our school who would actually be able to enjoy themselves at the wonderful park. And we are hoping to get out of the empty reservoir. I am really glad that all of you listened to what we have to say about this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Sally Neubauer, and after that, Marion Sue.
Good afternoon, Sally Neubauer, Assistant President of the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park. I think we should give a hand to those children for all the hard work they put into their presentations. As you know, as I've been before this board on several other occasions to talk about Elysian Reservoir, and as you know, this has been over a 20-year process that I've been involved in trying to come up with a solution that is acceptable to the community and that meets the department's water quality standards. The buried landscape tank is the only one that does. As you have heard, this is a beautiful spot. If you haven't been there, you really should go and see this canyon. It is a 40-acre beautiful wild canyon, and at this point in time, it's covered with, the reservoir is covered with ugly bird balls, and a plastic cover would be uglier than the bird balls, so if you can imagine that. What I'm asking you today, as guardians of the city, as ambassadors of goodwill, is to do the right thing and find the money to cover Elysian with a landscape buried tank. You recently approved a $554 million package for a rate increase for the consumers that the DWP figured would cost the average bill, the average ratepayer, an additional $4 a month. By those figures in that report, we figured if you were to increase, if you were to allow for the money to be spent for this reservoir to have the right thing done, the average bill would increase it by another 26 cents a month by those figures in that report. So I ask you, please, won't you do the right thing? This is a 100-year project. The EIR did not look at the long-term environmental impact report, the environmental impact. The long-term impact is a beautiful piece of 14 acres of parkland for people to use in a park-poor city. And there's no arguing that it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Marion Sue, and after that, Peter Lassen.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm a fourth-generation American and have gone to school and taught and lived in this community for almost 70 years and have seen the need for open space for recreation increase over the years. The buried tanks are the only solution to preserving and adding to parkland. Other areas have had their wishes fulfilled concerning their reservoirs. We are the last ones that need your help for a long-term economical and environmentally sound solution. It would be one of the best things you could do to see that this region receives an additional 14 acres to Elysian Park, one of the gems of Los Angeles, and a place we should preserve and enhance for future generations. We know you can do it. Whatever you do now will have a lasting effect on Los Angeles and future generations. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Peter Lassen, and after that, Lynn Hill.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. By voting yes on the proposal that you have before you, namely the floating rubber cover, you are really guilty of short-term thinking. As you've heard from the kids, from other people, and will hear further, we have been working for 20 years, more than 20 years on this project, funded, by the way, by the department. There has been a mitigation specialist funded by the department to work with us for these 20 years. That is based on the original litigation. To deny that process and end up throwing the whole thing out and simply deciding on a floating rubber cover, when in fact we have generally agreed that the landscape buried tank is preferable, would be denying 20 years of work. Also, we understand from Mr. Singley that the department is about 30% complete with the buried tank project. It has not gone into working drawings yet, but the design is pretty much finished. You are also throwing that money away. For the future, I should note that the Economic Roundtable project released late last year noted that 1,300 to 1,400 jobs would be created over the next 5 years for this project. Virtually none would be created by the floating rubber cover. Lastly, Mr. Nickel asked us when we met with him to find some money. He said we could do this project, the landscape buried tank, if we could find the money. The fact is, we have met with staff and found about $30 million of the money. We reached a stopping place because of time, but also because the commission had not approved the EIR. So we are requesting you to stand with the EIR, which calls the proposed, uses the term proposed project as the landscape buried tank. Please go that route and deny the proposed floating cover. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Lynn Hill, and after that, Christine Peters.
I'm one of the founding members of the Coalition to Preserve Open Reservoirs. In 1987, we were formed to preserve the last 10 reservoirs that you saw in that presentation that were mentioned. And as a lot of good points have been made, and I'll try not to go over them all again, but at our last and best count, the CPOR represented 350,000 voters in Los Angeles. We were tasked by the City Council to work with the DWP to come up with mutually acceptable solutions that would keep our open space, keep the residents and the citizens happy with the aesthetics, and keep you happy with the water quality. The other reservoirs have all gotten what they need, and there have been concessions made and money spent so that the aesthetic of the areas where the other reservoirs are in, Stone Canyon, Rowena, Silver Lake, Lake Hollywood, will be preserved. You're just throwing a lesion away. It's the last one. It's in, may I say, a less advantaged neighborhood. We were told for the last 20 years that we would come up with a solution that would be acceptable to the people, and suddenly we have one that 98% of the people who considered it have come back to you and said, no, this is not acceptable. And yet you are here saying, well, we're just going to do that. We're going to take the cheapest, quickest route on this. It's unfair to Elysian. It's unfair to Los Angeles, which has a huge deficit of open spaces. It's not just a matter of whether people will be able to walk on top of the reservoir or look at a cover. It's that the cover is going to ruin that whole canyon area, and people will not be going down there at all anymore. We've been hearing about budgets for the last 20 years. There was a budget problem 20 years ago. There's a budget problem now, but I know you guys are smart enough and resourceful enough to come up with ways to get us a buried tank there that will save this parkland for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Christine Peters, and after that, Susan Borden.
Barbara.
Pardon?
To the officer at the
Oh,
back.
can you go grab that? Oh, she has something to pass out.
Good afternoon, honorable commissioners. My name is Christine Peters, and I'm the president of the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park, and we thank you for your time, that time having been more than the last 20 so years. We also would be the lead organization that the council member referred to, who would be one of those sharpened legal swords who will pursue further litigation should this not end equitably. The EIR violates CEQA because it is a post hoc rationalization for decision already made. In Laurel Heights Improvement Association versus the Regents of California, 1988, quote, the fundamental purpose of an EIR is to provide decision makers with information they can use in deciding whether to approve a proposed project, not to inform them of the environmental review effects of projects that they have already approved. If a post-approval environmental review were allowed, EIRs would likely become nothing more than post hoc rationalization to support action already taken. We have expressly condemned this use of EIRs, unquote. The DWP, its staff, and the general manager have repeatedly presented documentation as well as PowerPoint presentations to, among others, the Energy and the Environment Committee of the City Council, as well as the full body of the LA City Council in regards to the 7-acre rubber cover that will cover the Elysian Reservoir. This predetermination of a project resolution prior to the full vetting and approval of the EIR is in fact a violation of CEQA and subject to a lawsuit. Claiming that the preferred project, the 14-acre landscape buried tanks, will be disruptive and cause adverse environmental impacts is disingenuous. If this argument were valid, then the Headworks project, currently spiraling over budget and causing adverse environmental impacts for the last few years, should never have been approved. Cost cannot be a consideration when determining the environmental superior choice, but clearly in the case of Elysian Park Reservoir and its working-class constituents, it has. The only city reservoir located within a park, it is receiving a marginalized solution, while the reservoirs in more geographically affluent areas receive lavish landscaping and, of course, fencing to keep the potential users out. This is a sham resolution of an over 20-year mediation process started as the result of a proposed 7-acre aluminum cover for Elysian Reservoir. While Rowena, Hollywood, Ivanhoe, and Silver Lake overlook their preserved and improved neighborhood jewels, the constituents of Elysian must settle for a dreary rubber cover. This is a social justice and equity issue that, CEQA aside, the DWP Commissioner, staff, and management should be ashamed to consider as a viable resolution to a court-ordered mediation process started over 20 years ago as a result of the very same type of lawsuit. There is no acceptable alternative other than the landscape buried tanks park expansion proposal that is here before you today for your approval. Please do the right thing for the constituents of LA's first regional park, dedicated in 1886 to the city of Los Angeles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Susan Borden.
Good afternoon. I really like listening to those children. I hope that I have grandchildren who are that smart and that observant at some point, and that I can take them over to Elysian and tell them that underneath where they're playing there used to be a water. Because I've walked around in the park for years, and that's really the only thing that's going to be acceptable. There's millions of people who use the park, and somebody referred to the fact that it's the main recreation for lots of working class people, myself included. And I also want to point out that if you have a rubber cover, every time it's replaced, which is much more frequently, you are going to disrupt life for more and more people, because this area is going to get more and more dense. The other thing is that the people who live downtown, and we're seeing more and more people downtown, are going to be able to access this parkland when we have it. And that's going to cut down on trips in cars, which is one of the things that we want to do in order to improve the environment. I really think, I'm perfectly prepared to pay 26 cents extra for this. I think it would be an absolute wonderful thing to have this here, and it would be a win-win for everybody. So please do that, and do come to the park, and let's have all our grandchildren thanking us.
Thank you.
Okay, that was our last card. We can close the public comment section.
Okay, questions from commissioners?
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to ask Glenn a question, if I may, and then I have a few others. So, Glenn, you put up a slide showing the 60-year equivalent of the various scenarios, and
yes.
What would it be for a 100-year equivalent, looking forward? I mean, where do the prices come in at that time?
These were done with present worth, so as the farther you get out, when you bring those costs back to present worth, there's not a lot added to the total. So we're looking at, the cost today, and so those costs projected forward.
But the floating cover would need to be replaced, where the buried tanks would not need to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to the Elysian Park numerous times, and I've been to that area, and it is true that LA does have the least amount of park space. And something that Councilman Reyes said was really hit home with me, was that we should try to make the community whole, and that's where our decision making should take us. And it is true that Elysian is a parkland, and it is where less advantaged people live. And so this parkland, there's 14 acres that this is beautiful horizontal area that could potentially be of some service. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Nichols, what can be done within, LA DWP's authority to mitigate against this loss of 14 acres?
Well, Commissioner, we have had a number of meetings with, as some of the commentators here indicated, we've had a number of meetings with them regarding the project, obviously over the years in the project, and the change to the project that came about after we received the results of the environmental impact report and the relative effects of that. And we do understand their concerns associated with that. I would like to point out that in your your board letter, there are a number of items that we are proposing as enhancements with the project as proposed that's sitting before you right now, in terms of, and I won't go over all of them, they're all in there, and singly presented those as presentation on trail upgrades and access upgrades and improvements that will make the area more accessible and more usable. But we've also thought about, what can we do to try to address the concerns that have been voiced by the community regarding that additional, as you point out, that additional kind of level surface recreation opportunity that the buried tank option could provide. And when we look at it, when we talk about 14 acres, the reservoir, that's the area around it, inclusive of the area around it. The reservoir itself is between 6 and 7 acres in size. The area around that will still remain open and available. In fact, enhanced access and safe access is part of these enhancements that we have in here. Well, when you look at saying, well, where could we, what could we do to achieve 7 acres of flat recreational park-type land in their inner city area, and what would that be? We looked at there's no specific exact project in mind, but we've looked at what values are for land and see that about somewhere around $12.5 million would provide that land elsewhere, and to provide that opportunity, an opportunity that doesn't exist now, doesn't exist at the reservoir now either. And we think that could be acquired. It could be a part of an enhancement to the proposed project. It would be an amendment, if you will, of the proposed project. Whatever the specific lands are and specific design would have to be done later. That's another matter that would have to be addressed, how you then apply those funds. But if it were possible to set aside some funds to as part of the project that provided for some type of a community park recreation area that's accessible to the inner city, we believe that would be something that goes a long way to addressing this. My recommendation, if you wanted to address that, would be for the board to consider amending the resolution that's in the board package for you to provide for some sort of a fund, community park, community recreation, what you would call it, kind of fund that sets those monies aside and commits that, and then ultimately later would have to be determined the specific project. I don't put you on the spot, but I wonder if legal counsel could, maybe we could take a few minutes or break or something to see if there's some language for an amendment could be crafted that they could consider, the board could consider.
If you give me a couple moments, I can put the language together. I would note, though, that any money that you do put in that fund would be subject to CEQA. No funds would be released until CEQA is completed. Also, that money that's put into that fund doesn't change any of the conclusions that's in your CEQA documents today. We could include such a fund in the resolution, but it wouldn't be mitigation for any undisclosed or unacknowledged impacts. We think the CEQA document that you have today covers those disclosed impacts and has fully mitigated those, but we can include that additional language if you give me a minute. While you discuss the rest, I can.
Why don't we just finish with other questions?
Draft.
Commissioners or comments other commissioners have? Commissioner Noonan?
This is really just a follow-up question to Commissioner Palfrey's questioning. Has Parks and Recreation been approached? Are there any funds that are available to perhaps bridge the delta between the floating cover and the buried tank?
We have spoken with Parks and Recreation. They come back to us and identify all the shortfalls they have right now with their current programs. That isn't to say that there might be some opportunity at some point in the future to try to get some augmentation of this. The notion of doing something, is the gap difference here was presented here is like $85 million if to go to the buried tank option. And I guess you can never say never, but that when we talked with them about the concept of that level, their eyes kind of rolled, to be honest with you. It's just a lot of money.
Part of the proposed project with the buried storage was for Rec and Parks to come in and make those specific improvements. So our part with the $110 million was to provide the soil on top, and then Rec and Parks would have to provide the funding to create whatever recreation facility would be on top of that. So they were already kind of looking towards some additional funding for that.
But as a point of clarification, that would be a fraction of the cost that it would take for that, right?
And as for the insinuation that the department is showing favoritism to higher net worth communities, would you remind me at least of the 10 reservoirs, which of those have incorporated a floating cover? I know that recently we decided to do that in Stone Canyon, but I can't recall of the remaining 8 which of those are buried and which of those are using floating covers.
Right. Well, just most recently, we've just finished San Ynez Reservoir, and that was a floating cover. And then we just approved Upper Stone as a floating cover. The Los Angeles Reservoir, which is our largest reservoir in the system that we have to cover, will be placing shade balls on Los Angeles Reservoir. So those are 3 of the 10.
Commissioner Moss?
Okay. First question. If we were to approve the document and select the floating cover as the preferred environmental option, does that preclude ever going back to the reservoir and putting in the buried tanks?
It wouldn't, because it doesn't change basically the characteristics of the existing reservoir now much. We would be removing the tower as it stands now, but that would have to be removed if you were to go back again and do another project. So conceivably, you could go, once the initial cover wears out, you could decide to put a different project in there.
Would there be anything that would need to be done in the design of the floating cover to permit future conversion to buried tanks?
I think there's not enough of that would be that much different that we wouldn't just go ahead and design that the way we'd normally design it and then come back and remove it and change it later.
So this moment in time doesn't, end it for all purposes. If the community were to, at some point, want to come back and revisit the issue of the buried tanks in the future, they would be free to do that from a design or an actual construction standpoint.
That would be possible, sure.
Okay. Let me turn to page 517 in the draft environmental impact report. And I want to call your attention to the last paragraph in there, because it seems that the bulk of the public commentary and the written commentary that we've gotten is really drilling down on the significance of the EIR in terms of its aesthetic analysis of the floating covers, i.e. floating covers are ugly, they're man-made, they're going to ruin the canyon. And I just wanted to go over with you the conclusion that you draw where you say that there is no environmentally significant impact by having a floating cover. And maybe we could, talk about that a little bit, because I think that's really the heart as to whether this is a sufficient EIR document or not. So the conclusion that you draw in the document is, quote, however, by selectively screening the view of the cover with additional landscaping from the limited number of available viewpoints, the visual impact of the cover itself would be reduced to a less than significant level. Can you expand upon that? What exactly would be involved in adding additional landscaping and screening the cover.
Okay, I'll take that one. There are sites that allow a view of the reservoir along the road that's going towards the view site. The view site itself, you have to go off to the right-hand side of that view site, and there are a few key places where I think some vegetation could be planted that would just direct your attention away to the rest of that view site, which is overlooking the city. Otherwise, there are no real stopping points along the road that have a real good view of the reservoir.
So let's talk about the view. How many residences actually observe the reservoir?
There are no residences above the reservoir that have a view of the
So that's
reservoir
unlike,
itself.
say, in Santa Ynez, that there are hundreds of homes that look down on the floating cover of Santa
Correct.
Ynez. What about from the freeway? Can you see the reservoir from the freeway?
No, the freeway is down below the dam.
Okay. So the only areas where people would see the reservoirs if they're in the park and they're on one of the ring roads or one of the roads above the reservoir?
Yes.
And those are the areas that you would propose to do landscaping to mitigate any visual impact?
Correct.
Okay. What about are you going to have trails that lead down to the reservoir level itself? How will that work? If I'm in the park and I'm hiking around, will I be able to hike off the road and down into the reservoir and see it at that point?
What we're planning is to have the roadway that goes into the reservoir and around the reservoir open. We'll have a fence around the reservoir cover itself, but that roadway would be open. And in the rear of the property, where we'll have this wildlife pond, we'd allow people to go back there and take advantage of that pond. And there could be some trails that would lead down there from other trails down to that wildlife pond.
Can you see the reservoir from the wildlife pond area?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so there you would have the impact of seeing the man-made covers. They're
Sure, and
away.
walking
is part of your,
around the reservoir, you'd certainly see
Right.
it as you go.
Is part of your conclusion here addressing that, where you could landscape around that? I mean, would you put up trees to block the view of the reservoir from the pond?
I don't think we could put enough trees around the reservoir would want to block that view of the immediate view right from the wildlife pond or from the roadway around the reservoir. It's a public works. It's a facility that's vital to the city, and people can enjoy it for a water project.
Now, I don't recall, because of the voluminous nature of the document, have there been, I guess, Department of Recs and Parks would be in charge of the actual landscaping in the, telling you where to put the plants? We would just be offering, as a department, to fund the plants? How would that work?
That would be my suggestion, is that we will do some landscaping up front that will take care of most of the basic needs, and then work with Department of Rec and Parks to further develop the property.
And what is the landscaping budget in the proposed project?
Total mitigation budget that we had right in the park was about $3.1 million.
Okay. Do you feel that would be sufficient to add all of the landscape screening that would mitigate the aesthetic challenges of the floating cover?
I believe so.
Okay.
If I could,
Sure.
I'd just like to add that they were
Chuck,
less
would you
significant.
introduce yourself, please, Chuck?
I'm Chuck Holloway. I manage the environmental assessment group for the department. There were less than significant impacts to aesthetics, and so we're not mitigating impacts to aesthetics. Those were park enhancements that improved kind of the entrance and screened the cover, if you will, but it wasn't to mitigate, per se, aesthetic impacts.
Well, that's not what page 517 says, though. Because you're saying that you would need to add the additional landscaping to reduce the visual impact of the cover to less than a significant level. So there is mitigation involved. I'm just probing to make sure that there's enough mitigation to really satisfy the issue, because that might be part of the mitigation that we can provide. If we look at the sensitive areas in the park that could be affected by the visual impact of the floating cover and really beef up the landscaping there, if that's our primary strategy, then I would suggest that we do that. I think we owe it to the users of the park to provide that kind of expenditure. And let me just ask one other question. Going back to the proposed project, what portion of the cost is related to park uses? I know we were going to put 3 feet of soil on top of the concrete. How much is that element of it? In other words, I guess what I'm getting at is, how much would we reduce the cost of the proposed project? We just turned it over to the Department of Rec and Parks with just a bare structure, that suits our needs for reservoir use, but, had no other costs associated with making it into a park.
We didn't have the costs associated with specifically making it a park, just the 3 feet of cover. So that would be, I'm not sure exactly the numbers there, but probably $1 million or so.
Okay, so a small percentage of the total cost. All right, well, that's it for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Parfrey?
Just to follow up on a couple things. When it comes to a floating rubber cover, I've heard in the past that there's options related to design. Has that been determined thus far, or is that still open to community input?
That's really open to input, the specific color to be used. I think we've probably narrowed down the specific material. We've got good experience with some material. But we have used a multicolor effect or a straight black, and that we could have those options vetted with the community.
And I know, reading the Los Angeles Times yesterday, their front page above the fold story was about Elysian Park and plans for development there, and I assume that Councilman Reyes has been involved in those discussions to some extent. Does our plans at Elysian Reservoir play into any of those other plans related to Dodger Stadium? I know that's beyond the kin of
we haven't made any connections there, but
all right. Well, that's up to the councilman, I suppose. I just want to make a statement that I've met with some of the community members, and they entered into good faith with this department in a process of over 20 years to come up with what they thought was a just and suitable alternative. And I'm very sympathetic with their expectations, with the level of participation, the way that they've engaged with this department, and I can imagine their disappointment. I can imagine that they feel that they've engaged in a process where they've been somewhat led down the merry path, and it's. As someone who is a public member who's appointed to this commission, I'm a member of the community too, and I only have words of empathy, and I feel that there could have been a better way to solve this issue, but it's more of a statement than a question. So, thank you.
Other comments or questions? I actually join Commissioner Parfrey in being sympathetic to the concerns that were voiced here today, particularly the loss of urban parkland. On the other hand, what we struggle with is to balance cost implications, environmental implications, with creating more open space. So I think we should consider an enhancement along the lines that you suggested, if the board is in agreement with that. If the board doesn't disagree, I'd like to ask Joe to draft a possible amendment toward that kind of a combination, and then we can have a discussion and we can ultimately make a decision.
I put something together while we were discussing the other items, and basically what it would do is it would have...
Clearly you're not a private sector lawyer who gets paid by the hour, but go ahead.
The language I would suggest is adding another be it further resolved at the end of the document on page 14, and that would read, be it further resolved that the board approves the establishment of a $12.5 million community parks fund. The fund will be used for public purposes related to community parks, though no specific purposes are established at this time. Future proposed appropriations from the fund will be fully evaluated under CEQA before any projects funded by such appropriations are approved. the board hereby finds that the establishment of the fund will not create any different or substantially more severe environmental impacts from those examined in the EIR, does not constitute, quote, new significant information as the term is defined under CEQA guidelines section 15088.5, and would not otherwise require recirculation of the EIR.
Comments or quick?
Yeah, I need to see that in writing, and I have some questions. Where do we come up with the 12.5?
That was the figure that was just used in the discussion, so that's where I came up with that.
That amount is our estimate of what 7 acres of flat replacement property would cost in this inner city area.
All right, well, we'd have to discuss that. I'm not sure if I'm entirely comfortable just sort of picking a number out of the air like that. I'd like to see some backup for that. And also, I'd like to see if we do make an amendment like that, we have to direct it to this project. Otherwise, I wonder if we're exceeding our role as commissioners. How is this an actual expense of DWP? Can we legally approve a park fund with the general kind of description that you have?
You can legally you're doing it as part of this project.
Well, I would think we would need to have some language saying would be for this project.
Yeah, it's in the resolution authorizing this project. So you're not doing it as a standalone resolution. As I mentioned earlier, you're incorporating it into the resolution authorizing this project.
Well, at the risk of being a little legalistic, I'd still like to see it in writing before I can really sign off on it.
Other questions, Commissioner?
Yeah, in fact, if we could put this over, I don't know if we're going to entertain a motion or vote on this, but if we could put it over for a few minutes to have that resolution typed up, I'd be happy to
Sure,
take a
we
look
can
at
do
it.
that, because we're going to actually go into closed session now. So why don't we hold the matter, right? Why don't you draft it so the commissioners can all take a look at it?
Okay.
Right? And then I want to go into closed session now.
Yeah, I would like to, just so we're clear, you have the resolution itself is a little lengthier than our usual resolutions. It's 14 pages. So do you want us to incorporate this into that resolution?
Yeah, we can add it as a final paragraph.
So you want to see it in final?
No, I just need to see the new language.
Okay, great,
yeah,
we'll
and then
that.
we can add it by amendment to the resolution.
What I'd request then is if we could go into closed session right now on item 29C2, and during that time period, we can have it put together for you.
Thank you.
Does that suit the desires of the committee?
Yes, Mr. President. I don't know in terms of procedurally how we move on this, but I think there were some items on the consent calendar where we could allow some of the DWP personnel to get back to their work if we're able to dispatch those items quickly.
Okay, let's see where we are on the consent agenda. We got speakers, though. It's a problem.
Oh, we do? On each and every item?
Yeah, let me work my way through it. Item 7 is fine.
Item 8, I'd like to pull,
Item 8,
please.
we're going to pull. Item 9, we can move forward, but Commissioner Moss must accuse himself. We've got a speaker on 10. 11, so 11 we can move forward with. 12, we have a speaker.
And I'd like to pull item 13.
You want to pull 13, and we're going to defer 14. So the only two items we can deal with are items 7 and 11. Is there a motion to approve those two from the consent agenda?
So moved. I second.
Hearing no objections, items 7 and 11 are passed. So those folks who are on those items obviously are free to do whatever they need to do. Now we're going to go into closed session. We'll move into the room in the back.
Yeah.
Recording? We're recording.
Tom, I believe Reggie said we're recording.
Okay. We're back on the record. Thank you for the brief interruption. I can entertain a motion to approve item 6 from the consent agenda also. Is there a motion?
There is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 6 is approved. Item 8, I believe Commissioner Moss had questions on item 8. Who's presenting item 8?
That would be Marty Adams.
I'll get him.
Why don't we just,
Item number 5, the minutes.
oh, yeah.
I move to approve item 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 5 passes. Welcome, Marty.
Thank you.
We're
Good afternoon.
on item 8.
Item 8, I appreciate you for giving me a moment to speak about this.
Well, I think we've all read the item. I think Commissioner Moss has questions. Why don't we just
Okay.
go right to his questions?
Well, I just kind of actually was more general. I just wanted to hear a little bit more discussion of what the policy is going to be. It makes
Okay.
sense to, I think, renew it, but I'm not quite sure why we're renewing it. So,
Okay.
and are there any differences in the policy that we're now advancing as opposed to what the policy has been?
Right, there's some slight changes, and as you read, this policy originally was adopted in 1938. Then 38 years later, the board reaffirmed it in 1976 with some modifications based on the Charles Brown Act and taking that into consideration. This policy it basically reaffirms that it's the department's interest to dispose of land that's not needed for operational purposes and not tied to water rights. And we know there's a tremendous interest in both the Inyo and Mono counties for land to be available that the city finds excess. The one change we've done here is that we've clarified how the Brown Act would be addressed. The Charles Brown Act was passed so that land could not be sold or leased out from underneath current tenants. And so this reaffirms how we would auction off land and make sure that in keeping with that state law that the current tenant would have an opportunity to match the highest bid. And we have had strong indication that there's an interest for us to try to sell some of the lands that have had long-term leases on them, as well as the 75 acres that we're committed to in the water agreement, and some of the excess property that were identified in the water agreement might also become available as well. So we think this is a real benefit both to the city, because a lot of these are leases that we keep processing, and it's just year after year of paperwork for no real end game, and there's a real benefit to the local economy.
Do you have a sense of how much of this excess land, how much it could yield the department?
We believe there's about, from the indications from an informal survey we did, there's probably about 50 properties that are currently leased that the long-term lessee has an interest in purchasing. And then there's other additional properties that have been basically out of lease or out of circulation, particularly along 395 in Lone Pine Independence, that there's been interest expressed to us as well by Inyo County, that we put those up, maybe another half dozen properties or so. So I would think, I'd love to see 5-6 dozen properties be made available and sell over time. But it's a lot of work for us to process these and bring them to the board, because it goes to the board, it goes to council. Before we went to that effort, we wanted to make sure that you still agree with this policy in general.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Item 9 can I get a motion to approve items 8 and 9? I know Commissioner Moss has to
Oh, yeah. I have to recuse myself on item 9.
Is there a motion to approve items 8 and 9?
Well, if you do 8 and 9 together, I can't vote.
Oh, it's true. Is there a motion to approve item 8?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, item 8 passes. Is there a motion to approve item 9?
There is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 9 passes. We have a speaker card for item 10.
Okay, the speaker for item 10 is Dr. Tom Williams.
I'll make it very quick. Dr. Tom Williams, where's the organization chart for the organization where the functional transfers of certain functions will be from the joint system to the power system? Is there an organization chart for all of the various systems within the Department of Water and Power? That's very simple. So how can we understand transfers if we don't have the chart to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the commissioners, item 10? Is there a motion to approve item 10?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Hearing no objections, item 10 passes. We have a speaker card on item 12.
For item number 12, the speaker is Dr. Tom Williams.
Very quick. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also DWP liaison for our council. It's about time that we get some real recognition on the part of the neighborhood councils. We're trying to help you guys, but sometimes it is difficult because we don't get timely notifications. We don't get a lot of transparency and accessibility to the information. So I'm glad you're going to extend it, I hope, and we're willing to participate, even beyond fire hydrants. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item 12?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 12 passes. Item 13, I believe Commissioner Park, we had a couple of questions on that. Can someone come up? Who's presenting that item?
This concerns the contract with PA Consulting related to rate restructuring.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, George Chin, race manager.
Thank you very much. I understand we have a number of contracts with PA Consulting.
Yes.
And I understand that the Los Angeles City Council also has contracts with PA Consulting where they advise them.
Yes.
And let me ask this in a very delicate fashion. Please describe the firewalls that are in place to ensure that the council we are getting and the council that the city council is getting, there's no cross-pollination.
I think they're not allowed to talk to each other. There's a policy set in the okay, I'm sorry. In the original ball package that was 2 years ago when the things set, and there's the guidelines. They're not supposed to talk to each other. They don't share the office, and just they work separately. So there's the firewall set at that time.
And I'd like to ask the general manager, are you satisfied that these firewalls are firm and that we're getting what we need and council's getting what they need and there is that privacy that is actually secured in these agreements?
I am satisfied by that. In fact, I was the one that first asked them to provide for our review, reviewed by our counsel, legal counsel as well on the matter, to make certain that they establish it. And there are not only people can't be from the same office, they can't have shared electronic servers, so they can't get access to information back and forth. We've been working in this situation. As a reminder, the only reason we got into this circumstance is that the department had been using Huron Consulting for a number of years, has a very good background. This rate process has grown, as we all know, much longer than had been anticipated. And it was only through Huron becoming acquired by PA Consulting that they became part of the same firm. They are indeed separate groups within that organization from that perspective alone. So we've seen no difficulties. We've seen no evidence whatsoever of information being crossed over, and we believe that our interests have been served very well. I can assume that City Council has, but I can't speak for Council.
No, I appreciate the answer. That's the extent of my questioning, and I'm satisfied with the general manager's answer.
Is there a motion for item 13?
Well,
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
I didn't have a question, but now I do. I'm sorry. I was kind of surprised by the figure that's being proposed of $328,000, and it states that amount of money is solely to incorporate revisions of proposals that will be submitted to review by the ratepayer advocate. Can you just explain to me why just incorporating revisions would cost so much money?
Okay, I think they have to deliver 3 major documents the document that they have to prepare. I have one of them. They start, have some draft on these, but they have to submit the document to help the RPA ratepayer advocate. All the information that for all these very difficult rates and behind the reasons, the business driver, why we have those rates increase, and also the analysis on the rates. And the other thing that they have to help us on the rate ordinance, look over, make sure it's validated, and also, look in the industry standards and make sure everything's gonna be in good order. And also they have to prepare for the board communication information to this board, and to have the entire comprehensive document about what the reasons and how the rate design background, everything. And then to the council, I think there's some also documentation they have to help us to help. So it's a lot of work involved, and the knowledge that it's pretty difficult to transfer right away because we have an urgent need to get rates approved going forward. So that's why, yes, we amend a couple of times, and we just like to have this one time. Then hopefully we get the rates, and then moving forward, definitely we're gonna have to revisit the consulting firm later on.
I understand that PA Consulting charges us by the hour. Does the department audit, the invoices that they bill us?
Yes, I think that every bill being audited by department, and also sent it to the controller office. It's very detail oriented. They have bus tickets, not reason why they kick out. So it's very detailed and a lot of information we check.
Commissioner, just to add to that, I also review every one of those invoices on that too in detail on it. So they provide extensive information. We have questions at times, and we dig into it in a lot of detail. Just to augment a little bit further Mr. Chen's response here on this, and that is we're headed into a new process in dealing with the ratepayer advocate right now. And in that process, we're having to provide not necessarily more information per se, because we have always provided a lot of information to the City Council's advisor, but the manner in which we're providing it and the level of context and explanation around it is much deeper than we have done in the past. And in order, as Mr. Chen indicated, in order to try to meet the deadline we're talking about, trying to get things moving forward, it just requires a lot of intensive effort over the next few months to give us that support.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Nichols, once we get through this rate request, do you foresee the need for consultants like PA Associates to be able to interface with the ratepayer advocate on a going forward basis, or is it your intention to sort of get us off the need for such consultants? I know you're not going to like me hearing this from me, but I actually think our need is going to increase and not decrease. I do anticipate that we will be going out, we can finally get through this process and catch our breath, is going out for a competitive bid for consultants. Not that we have any dissatisfaction with PA Consultant at all on this, but as we go forward, I think we need to kind of refresh the pool and take a look at that and make certain that we're getting up-to-date bids on that. But just to give you a foreshadowing of the things that I think will be coming forward in the future, even after we've gone through this rate process this year, we're still going to, next year, be looking at the next 3 years after that. And we're also, as we've discussed in a few of these sessions, we'll be talking about more about rate structure, cost allocation, rate design matters that really take a good year or more to get done. And we don't have those skill sets really within the department to the level of detail that we would need to do. So we will definitely be continuing to need outside assistance. Barring that, we would need to go hire a lot of people to get that capability in-house, and that's very cyclical type of thing. So you'd be barely intensely needing them sometimes and not needing them at all in other years.
Other questions on item 13? Is there a motion?
There is.
Second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 13 passes. Item 14 is deferred. Let's move back to item 23. Have the commissioners an opportunity to review the additional proposed provision to the resolution? Commissioner Moss?
Yes. I've looked at it, and I'm a little concerned about the generality of the language that's, to my comfort levels, not specifically tied into this particular project and to Elysian Park. And I would recommend that we alter it, and I have some suggested language to make it specific to this project and to Elysian Park as additional mitigation measures related to the floating cover alternative.
It is not
It's
mitigation.
not mitigation. So this is an enhancement.
All right, we'll call it enhancement.
Okay. Yeah.
Additional enhancement measures then. And
Excuse me, Joe? Joe, you need to hear this.
Yeah, but we're listening and.
Okay.
yeah, I'm just concerned that if we don't link it back to the project and to the floating cover alternative, that we are going, in an area that really is exceeding our jurisdiction in terms of what we can promise for parks and recreation facilities as opposed to DWP expenses. So I want to sort of bring it back to the project and link it specifically to the project.
So is there language you'd suggest?
Yeah, I would do this. I would change the Community Parks Fund to the Elysian Park Fund. And then in the second sentence, I'd have it read, the fund will be used for public services related to enhancement measures at Elysian Park, in addition to the $3,160,000 enhancements described in the final EIR to be made in connection with the floating cover alternative for the project.
Commissioner, if
I may disagree with you on this,
Okay,
Richard.
that's fine.
Yeah, I think that we're maybe being overly scrupulous with some of the language associated with this, and so I'd like to ask council if they had other opinions.
Well, if you use Commissioner Moss's language, you tend to handcuff yourself to that area. So you have an issue where you have an identified project. So what you're doing now, here, my understanding was the intent was to establish this fund so that you have the ability to enhance the community parks in that core area. And that's what this language does.
Well, I'm interested in enhancing Elysian Park, not other parks in other areas. I mean, if the idea was to provide a fund to go buy other parkland somewhere else in the city of Los Angeles, I don't think that's DWP type responsibility, quite frankly. But I do feel that if we're enhancing Elysian Park as a consequence of this particular project, that I would be okay with. So, yeah, I am limiting it to Elysian Park.
if I could provide some explanation around the language, the way that I see the language is being discussed here is one of the things that the buried cover alternative would provide was flat area, new flat area. Elysian Park is there. Elysian Park's boundaries are there. It's established there. Whatever flat ground it has flat ground now. Not much of it is. And so I think the intent of when we were looking at finding another roughly 7 acres of flat ground accessible to inner city use was indeed recognized it could well be, in my expectation, probably would be outside of Elysian Park, and it's enhancing that to be a replacement for that which is foregone by not having that flat area on a buried cover.
So maybe here's a compromise. Why don't we suggest that we use our best efforts to find something in the Elysian Park area, but if not, we find something in a comparable urban community. How would that? So what if we don't have 7 acres in the area?
No, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm just concerned, and maybe council needs to pipe in on this. But can we as a commission approve expenditure of the purchase of parkland outside of a particular project?
That's the key point here. You're tying it into this project. So the fact that it's not geographically confined to this project is not a determining factor. You're approving that as part of this project. It's not independent of the project. It is part of the project. So it's permissible.
Okay. Well, then I would go ahead with the good faiths thing. I think primarily we should be looking to Elysian Park.
Yeah, to the extent possible.
I think it's favorable to say that within the Elysian Park area, I think would be an acceptable framing of it.
Did we use our best efforts there? If
Yes,
not,
yes.
And let me ask, with the approximately $3 million investment that you proposed for landscaping, using the floating cover, was the community contacted to get their opinions on what they'd like that area to look like, what they could use? And if not, I would recommend that community outreach happen, because we obviously want to make the area as special as it is to them now.
And, well, there'd be public hearings around CEQA, right?
I don't want to give a legal item, but those are two different questions. One is with regard you have in here right now a list of specific measures, enhancement measures that add up to the $3.16 million. Those are all to be spent in and around the direct area and have been delineated in fairly specific items on that. Separately, with regard to what would be done in terms of the appropriation or how the funds would be appropriate for this fund that we're talking about, the $12.5 million, that would require separate public discussions, and there would be advised been secret considerations and be input with respect to that, et cetera. So two different. I want to make sure we're kind of talking about two different things here. I want to make sure we're answering the right question you're asking.
It's a good clarification.
But
Joe, I want to go back to what Commissioner Moss' point was, though. We believe what we're offering up here is legally acceptable.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Just to add one thing, part of that $3.1 million was certainly the wildlife pond, which has been an integral part of the planning with the community all along. There are some other measures. The measures are right, on the roadway around was always contemplated, I think, by us all. Some of those measures were in consultation with the Department of Rec and Parks in conjunction with their master plan for Elysian Park, so enhancements that correspond to some other needs that they have too.
I'm just an advocate of including the community as much as possible in those decisions.
Absolutely.
Understand.
So we've got an amendment to the resolution. So is there a motion to add?
Can we hear the language, perhaps? Joe,
Okay.
can you run it through?
So we would, to the language that you have in there, would propose adding a sentence, and I'll read it all complete, but the sentence that we would add would be that best efforts will be used to locate enhancements in the Elysian Park area. However, there's no limitation to that geographic location if no suitable area can be located. And then we would incorporate that into the language that's been provided to you. I could read that in full if you like, or we can add it and redistribute it, whatever your preference is.
I guess I am a little concerned that you say there's no limitation. I think the basic concept here is we're losing urban parklands. So we'd like it to be in the Elysian Park area. If we can't find it there, it should be in a comparable urban community.
That's acceptable.
At least that's my thought. Others chime in. So.
But the first cut of this is to try to have it in the Elysian Park area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one last question. The use of the terminology best efforts, does that also apply to the time frame? Because you hear about the history of a 20-year discussion going back and forth. Would it be possible to put some time frame, or do you feel that best efforts addresses that?
I would say best efforts addresses that, and I would have some secret concerns if you start putting a time frame on it before you've made identifications.
And whose best efforts are we talking about here?
Departments.
The departments.
The departments? Okay.
Yeah. questions?
Well, I'd like to have it read one
Okay.
more time.
Read slowly.
We're revising
for all of us.
We're
Write
revising
quickly,
it
but read slowly. So.
We are revising it to include Commissioner Sales's.
Well, do we want to give them a few minutes and then move on to something else?
Why don't we do that? Why don't we just give them, rather
Go
than
ahead.
scurrying around, and we'll. I apologize to the people here on item 23. We will get this eventually. So, we'll come back to 23. We're up to item 15 now. Is that right?
Commissioners, this is, I'll present the
Yes.
feed-in tariff.
This is our feed-in tariff.
This is the last part of the approval process that we wanted to. I just wanted to cover some of the activities that has happened since last. We've made a presentation on the components of the feed-in tariff and the public outreach that we've done to get to that point. Since the last board meeting, the part that we wanted to have in place was the delegation of authority from the council, and also our mayor signed that ordinance into effect on April 12th. Basically gives our general manager the authority to sign these contracts for 25 years without going individually to city council. So that authority has been in place. So what we are requesting our board to approve is the final program launch, which includes three major parts: is the guidelines and the application forms that we have, the standard interconnection agreement, and the standard purchase agreement, which is included in the package. Also, what I'd like to add is that a couple of the milestones that we want to go through. Today is the first of the workshops that we've put in place in order for us to go through basically going through the guidelines, having the interested parties come in and show them how to fill the applications, what the process is all about before we have the window open about mid-May. And we're going to open the window mid-May and close it end of June, basically acquiring all the bids to come in. And by August of this year, we will do the shortlisting. We will announce the finalists on which ones we're going to go forward with, and close the agreements, finalize the legal agreements and close the loop on getting the contracts in place. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but this approval is going to give us the authority to launch the program mid-May and go through these phases. And as we go through the 10 megawatt phase, we're going to have reports, standard reports, come to you and also council E&E committee on what our findings are, where we are with the program, and how we're going to integrate these lessons learned into the process that takes us from 10 to another level of feed-in tariff.
We have one public speaker before we get comments.
Public speaker? Yes, Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, DWP liaison, but also we received a notice last night at 11:20 announcing a webinar today without any time given on it. I'm now told it will be 6:30 regarding the feed-in tariffs and how to do the feed-in tariff proposals for submission in May. May what? We don't know. So it was just a matter as to timeliness of notification would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners on item 15? Is there a motion or?
I'd like to move to approve.
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 15 is approved. Item 16. Actually, we want to go into closed session on this one. So I want to defer item 16, excuse me, because we're going to go into closed session on that one. Item 17. Item 17.
That's been deferred.
Item 17's been deferred.
It's been deferred?
That's news to us.
Are we sure about that?
This is Haynes.
The easement?
Correct. There's some things we have to straighten out regarding the resolution.
So do we need a motion to defer it? Is there a motion to defer the item? Staff's not ready to move forward? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 17 is deferred. Item 18.
Commissioners, item 18 is a proposed lease agreement between DWP and the Department of Rec and Parks regarding right-of-way property for public park purposes. Before staff answers any questions, we do have Chief Deputy City Engineer Deborah Weintraub here from the Bureau of Engineering with a brief presentation.
Let me ask the commissioners, do we need a presentation on this one?
Well, Mr. Sales, I recognize that it's a long day, but we do have a fellow from the other part of the city, from the Bureau of Engineering, who would like to educate us on some of these matters, which I think would be helpful.
He wants to hear the river story.
No, I mean, if all the other commissioners feel as if they already know this, that's okay with me. But sometimes it's good to have, fellows from other agencies come and present to us.
Are there questions for the young?
I don't have any questions, but
Okay.
I'd like to hear the story.
So read these folks a bedtime story. So they.
I'll try and make it fast.
With all due respect.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I understand it's been a long meeting. I'm Deborah Weintraub. I'm the Chief Deputy City Engineer for the Bureau of Engineering. I'm an architect by training. Myself and my boss, the city engineer, Gary Lee Moore, we have for quite a number of years been involved with spearheading and shepherding the river revitalization effort. We've had a great deal of cooperation and involvement from DWP staff and board members, and I'm really here to thank you and took this opportunity of this lease agreement just to come and say thank you to all of you. There you see our beautiful river, and in the background, the LA State Historic Park. The River Revitalization Master Plan, which DWP helped to finance, and that's the document here, was approved by City Council in 2007. We initiated it in 2005. We're basically here to talk about the Sunnyside Park, which, if you look at the bottom left hand of this slide, that's the existing condition of the park, and we had to do a lease agreement with DWP for the areas under your power lines, as well as with Caltrans to the area that leads up to the freeway. This is in just to give you the river story, in the master plan you see the end of the State Historic Park and the image that we produce at the bottom there of what could be done. It's a 50-year effort, and with cooperation from DWP we have a lot of projects underway. So here is the master plan that DWP helped to fund. I won't go into the details of it. It listed 240 projects, and the Sunnyside Park lease that you're approving today was one of the preferred projects that Council approved. Clearly a big part of the master plan is economic development. The master plan looks at long-term job and economic growth that would result from the eventual full build-out of the river revitalization. It also helps us bring near-term jobs. On your left here you see the River Corps, which are a group of youth who have been supporting areas along the river in terms of cleanup, as well as jobs for architects and engineers who are dear to my heart. This is a diagram that shows you some of the projects currently underway. We're involved with DWP, particularly on of the Aliso Creek Confluence Project, which the Trust for Public Land is the lead for. We have worked closely with the DWP on their Headworks project, because just below Headworks is a stretch of a ecosystem restoration project that we're doing along with the Army Corps of Engineers. So in terms of DWP involvement, I want to particularly thank some specific staff in your organization, Kelly Bernard in particular, Mudia, and he's going to kill me, I'm going to mispronounce this, Mudia Imu, and also David Pettyjohn, who at the direction of Council has led this WISER committee, the Watershed Infiltration, Supply, and Environmental Restoration Committee, which we've been meeting with quarterly. DWP has also helped us to provide technical support for the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study, which is a 50-50 cost share agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers. That agreement will be completed, that study will be completed in 2013-14, and DWP has been very significant in all of our visits from Washington, D.C., various generals, colonels, the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of EPA, who have personally come and visited the river to support our efforts. The Sunnyside River Park in particular is 3.2 acres of publicly owned land that with DWP's agreement of this lease, we are converting into a publicly accessible open space. It actually will take off from DWP's financial responsibility the ongoing maintenance, because the Department of Recreation and Parks has agreed to maintain the park once it's done. The diagram that shows we have over here just shows you it's a demonstration native landscaping with riparian plants, and there will be interpretive signage as well as places for the public to stop. It's on an existing bike path and connects with an existing bridge over the river to the communities to the east. That's the bridge that connects over the river to the community to the east. You see the project site, which is just to the north of the Glendale Hyperion Bridge, a project that the Bureau of Engineers is in the process of doing a seismic upgrade on, which will have stairs that will connect down to the park as well. And then the diagram of the parkland. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I just have one quick one. In your brochure here that you've given to us, thank you for that, there's a map of the whole LA River area, and then you have projected projects listed. Is there like a website or something you get more information on what those projects might be?
Yeah, lariver.org.
Okay, great.
You
Thank
can
you.
find us. And I hope you all received also your river pin, because I anticipate that you will wear it next time I come back.
No doubt.
Great. Thank you very much.
Is there a motion on item 18?
Yes, I'd like to move to approve.
Second?
Second?
Hearing no objections, item 18 passes. Item 19? Thank you.
Wasn't that a good story?
They will sleep much better tonight. Thank you. Welcome back, Marty.
Good afternoon again. Item 19 is a 30-year lease with the
Let
town
me
of
ask the
Mammoth
question
Lakes.
one more time. Do we need a report?
Not from me.
No, we don't need a report, but I do
Stories
have,
are good. We're good. Oh,
I do have a question of our council.
Well, let me,
on-
Commissioner Noonan, you want to hear the report, or are you okay with it? Okay.
I have a question of our council about the issue we talked about earlier. Is there?
Yes, Commissioner, we did address that, and actually, under a civil code section, there is an implied reasonableness, and it still allows you to avail yourself of the 1951 remedy.
Thank you very much. Good to know. I would like to make a motion.
Please do so.
To approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Hearing no objections, item 19 passes.
Thank you.
Let's go back to item 23. We've got it before us. And there are still a couple people who testified, so I'm going to be respectful of their time. On item 23, we now have a proposed...
We have a revised resolution or revised paragraph to the existing resolution.
It's an addendum to the existing resolution.
It would actually be inserted in the existing resolution. I
Okay.
would recommend, so we'd have a new resolution. We would
Okay.
insert this as the third to last, be it further resolved.
Has the board had ample opportunity to review the revised language?
Yes.
Okay, so do I need an amendment?
So we would ask for you to vote on the resolution as amended by this addition.
Okay, is there a motion?
There is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, the item passes. Item 23. I really want to thank all of our folks who came and gave public comment on item 23. I know that you have other things to do. I particularly want to thank the children who came, and I suspect that we will hear great things from several of them. Item 20.
Good afternoon, Shannon Pasquale, HR.
Susanna Reyes, Human Resources. Here before you are board resolutions that we are asking for you to approve. 2 board resolutions. One is for an amendment to the LADWP board resolution that was adopted in 1986, and the other one is for the amendment to the IBEW Health and Welfare Plan. That's also a board resolution.
So we're taking,
and then
that's
14 health.
Wait, were you talking about items 20 and 21? You're taking them together?
20 to 22.
We can take 20, 21,
22.
together, or we can take them separately.
Okay, let's
They're
take
all
them at
connected.
20, 21, and 22.
They're all
Yes.
connected.
Okay. All right. Questions or comments from any of the commissioners on these items?
No.
Is there a motion?
I do have speaker cards.
Oh, okay.
I have a speaker who wants to speak on item number 20 and 22. The speaker is Vincent Foley.
Thank you very much. My name is Vincent Foley. I'm with the DWP Retired Employees Association. I am the chair of the Benefits Committee, and I spoke to you exactly 1 year ago this week, expressing at that time our profound disappointment with department management for excluding our association for the first time in 42 years from participating in the discussions and the negotiations with the healthcare contracts. And a contract was changed from Blue Shield to United Healthcare, a PPO. The department and our association is still to this day resolving problems that resulted from that change. However, I would like to, on a very upscale note, thank department management and especially human resources management for including us this year. And in fact, 2 days after that board meeting, I got a phone call asking if we could meet with department management and resolve that situation. We did. We have been meeting on an ongoing basis since then. We have been included almost every other week. I'm here now as a retiree, so I can't say I didn't ask for it. But we do appreciate the change in department's stance about including the retirees. And this year, even though the rates are going to go up, the contract rates, and at the same time, the retiree subsidy is going down a bit. Again, we would like to thank Human Resources Management, especially Susanna Reyes, for including us every step of the way. And we would, as an association representing our 10,000 retirees and surviving eligible spouses, encourage you to approve items number 20 and 22. Thank you very much.
Does that cover your comments on items 20 and 22? Yes, it does. Thank you. Questions or comments from commissioners? Is there a motion to approve items 20, 21, and 22A through E?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, those items are approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 23.
I think we did that one.
Oh, that's right.
I don't recall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
There was something, item 23?
Item 20.
I'd like to revisit.
Four?
item 23.
Yeah.
Let's open it up again.
Item 24.
I do not have any speaker cards for item 24.
We have a speaker on item 25, though, right?
Yes, for
Okay.
25.
Item 24.
We should take them separately, I think.
Yeah, we think we should, don't you?
Yeah.
Item 24, any questions or comments on item 24? Is there a motion?
I'd like to move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 24 passes. Item 25, we have a speaker.
Yes, the speaker is Arthur Hansen.
Yes. The board apparently has taken the position that Labor Commissioner's hearing was res judicata on this hearing. The Labor Commissioner's office did not have a full evidentiary hearing that satisfied the Luby versus City and County of San Francisco requirements. I was deny due process if the summary Labor Commission hearing was to be final and binding on the proceedings to be held before this board. And if the DWP hearing was timely held, this is a 10-year-old grievance, before the Labor Commissioners hearing, would the DWP hearing be reciprocal upon the Labor Commissioners themselves? It's a question of, are they separate entities or what? However, since DWP's counsel did not tell me of the board's intent to use the Labor Commissioner's findings, I did not have the opportunity to cancel or suspend the Labor Commissioner's proceedings. Pursuant to California Evidence Code 623, since DWP did not make that claim and held the proceeding that was held here relating to this grievance, the claim is essentially res judicata, that they didn't object to it at the time. Why was the hearing held if they didn't have jurisdiction? The board claimed that it needed to meet and confer with the union prior to changing the grievance procedure. The DWP local, IBEW Local 18 MOU provides that the MOU is subject to state and federal law. The Cal Administrative Proceedings Act, as made applicable and passed as per Skelly versus California, was required but ignored by the board. I didn't find that out till I talked to an attorney who said it was already in the works. The City Council enacted an ordinance allowing the board to issue subpoenas years ago. It hasn't seen fit to do so, to comply with the State Administrative Procedures Act. The issue of proper purchasing procedures is in part subject to the DWP Code of Ethics, which is word for word the same in 2002 as the LA City Ethics Ordinance. All DWP's employees are required to sign the Code of Ethics. The finding of the board that I did not follow proper purchasing procedures without exactly specifying what those procedures were is constitutionally defective. There should be an exact finding of that particular issue, what procedures I supposedly didn't follow. Now, there's no allegation that I was properly trained at DWP on purchasing procedures, nor were my co-workers. No one from purchasing has made any statement as to who made any proper purchases. No one on the board has mentioned researching that issue. Under CIPRA, I got the information from the RNS Door, was the company who lowered their price from $3,800 to $3,200 after Lawrence Company, using the proper procedures, made a bid of that amount, and then that amount remained at $3,200. Now, there's a question of between $3,200 and $3,800, who was getting that money? Was it other than the contractor? Was it a DWP employee? I don't know. And the DWP is aware that there have been purchasing problems. Candice Merez, who has talked before this board a number of times, and there's a Mr. Yee that got, I know the attorney's fees on one of the people were $50,000, and I imagine the settlement was in the hundreds of thousands between those two. Now, it's a question whether the board should go back and clean this up, see that this hearing is held according to the Administrative Procedure Act, which is supposed to be, and I would suggest you put it over and research it with counsel before you accept this report, sirs and ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion
Please.
to move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any objections? Hearing none, item 25 passes. Item 26. And items 26 and 27, there's no public comment, right?
No, I do not have any cards turned in.
Are there motions to approve those items?
Move to approve.
Second.
Hearing no objections, items 26 and 27 are passed. I need a motion to defer item 14, please.
Move to defer.
A second.
Second.
Hearing no objections, item 14 is deferred. We have item 16, and we do have a public comment on that item. I think we'll have to take the public comment, then we're going to go into closed session. Or would you prefer to, your choice, you can. Would you rather wait? It's your, I'm trying to be respectful of your time.
Commissioner, just so we're clear, we're not going into closed session on item 16. We're going into closed session on item 29C1, which may touch on that item, but item 16 is not a closed session item.
Okay.
And I do have 3 speaker cards for 16.
On 16?
Yes.
Okay, then why don't we, what do you recommend? Do we want a closed session?
I would recommend we do the closed session first.
Okay.
On if we go 29C1 closed session in the executive room, and then come back out. So if we could defer, actually we won't be going into full closed session. We'll just do 29C1 first, and so we can recess right now to do that in closed session.
Okay.
recording.
Okay, we're back on the record. Let's take up item 16. We have two speakers.
Three speakers,
Three speakers,
actually.
excuse me.
The first speaker is Joe Safier.
Good afternoon. I'm starting to feel like a regular around here. President Sales, members of the board, staff. My name is Joe Safier. I'm appearing as a private citizen. However, in my past life, this past fiscal year, I was the foreperson of the Los Angeles 2010-2011 Los Angeles Civil Grand Jury, and I'm anxiously awaiting the department's response to our report. Just to be clear, and I've spoken with counsel. I understand I'll get a copy of it shortly after it's hopefully approved today, and so I'm encouraging you to act on it promptly since it's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next public speaker is Tony Wilkinson.
Tony Wilkinson from Panorama City. I would like to thank the board, President Sales and Commissioners Parfrey and Noonan and Moss, really for the renewal of the memorandum of understanding. It's something that makes a whole bunch of difference to us. But I'm here as actually part of that to talk about openness and disclosure. And the challenge that last board meeting, my friend Dr. Williams had said it's awfully hard to comment on the response if it's not posted. And of course this time we have an agenda and the link to the response is not live once again. And I know that the County Civil Grand Jury put an awful lot of effort into this. I know, as President Sales said, this board takes the County Civil Grand Jury's report seriously. So do we as citizens. There are some things in there that maybe could be considered, contentious by our labor partners. I think that more important are the issues about the historic water rights of the citizens of Los Angeles. And so I hope that we have the general public, which isn't here today, has an opportunity, if there's serious issues brought up in your response, to comment on that, because it's awfully hard not knowing what's going to be in your response. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, the last card is Dr. Tom Williams. I don't see him.
I think he's gone back to El Sereno.
Okay, he's not here, I guess. That was the last card then.
Counsel?
Commissioner Sales, the board has before the draft response to the Los Angeles County Grand Jury's report issued in June of 2011, and our request would be that the board adopt that draft as the final response of the board to the grand jury's inquiry.
Yeah, this matter's been pending a long time, and we do take it seriously, so we do feel the need to move quickly. Other comments from commissioners? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, the item is approved. Barbara, we have
the filed item.
Filed item 28. Any comments from any of the commissioners?
No, not from me.
Item 28 is being filed. Anything other than closed session now?
No, I think that's all taken care of.
Joe, you're on again.
We will now recess into closed session, and pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, we'll report any final action taken therein.
Thanks. I think we can do it here.